A crying mom on her front steps after her special needs daughter disappeared.
Okay. Do you want to talk outside with me?
She's scared.
But investigators say what they found changed everything, taking this case far beyond a search for a missing child.
A mother says she was in the shower. That's it. That's the whole explanation.
A mom reported her 13-year-old autistic daughter missing. But with what's being alleged in this case, that young girl may have escaped a home where she was allegedly abused.
He's here. Oh,
1 hour. Gone. And when she steps out, her 13-year-old daughter has vanished. But here's what nobody expected. That little girl didn't just wander off somewhere quiet. She ended up alone, inside a store, more than a quarter mile from home. Nonverbal. One shoe, a soiled diaper, and a jacket that store employees say was covered in feces.
Over here, we could talk.
Now, in this body camera video, you have an officer with the Leesburg, Florida Police Department that is called to this store because there's a girl who appears to be nonverbal, who is alone, and some of the Good Samaritans inside are trying to figure out where she came from. According to court records, that girl had one shoe on. She was wearing a soiled diaper. She had a jacket with her that appeared to be covered in feces, and no parents were on site. A store manager says actually the same girl, her name's been redacted, was at their location 2 days prior. In that case, it appeared that she was with her mom, but in that case again, that girl appeared to have a soiled diaper. But on this day, the officers
Strangers had to try and calm her down because she couldn't tell anyone her name. And look, at first, this reads like a nightmare every parent fears. A child with special needs slips away for a moment, and the world holds its breath until she's found safe. That part of the story, we can be grateful for. She was found. She's okay physically, in the sense that matters most right now. But then the story doesn't end there. It gets worse. Because once police start digging into the timeline, some of it stops adding up. The mother, a woman named Amy Evans, tells officers she was at her boyfriend's house. Her daughter was asleep and she went to shower. She says it was maybe 30 minutes. Investigators note in the report it was closer to an hour. Not a huge gap on paper.
well, they're here now.
Now, as police try to piece together what happened at the store, they receive a 911 call from a woman named Amy Evans. She is the girl's mom. She says that her daughter went missing from a home about an hour earlier. She says that she went into the shower and when she got out, her daughter had vanished. Found it interesting in the police report that Evans said that she was in the shower for no more than an hour. She was at her boyfriend's house, and when she gets out, her daughter, she says, is missing. She says that her boyfriend's house is 0.3 miles from the store where her daughter's currently at. Police then go to that house, but they don't bring Amy Evans' daughter with her because it seems like they want to know what the circumstances are inside this home and how this girl with special needs went missing. The girl has been brought to the hospital.
Strangers had to try and calm her down because she couldn't tell anyone her name. But ask any parent how long you'd actually let a nonverbal child with special needs go unchecked, and an hour starts to feel like a long time to not notice she's gone. Here's the thing, though.
Special needs. Now, Evans appears to be very distraught in this body camera video, but in the police report, officers allege a little more context here because they say there's more to the story. They write that Evans appeared to be apprehensive, fidgeting, leaning excessively, and they say she would zone out during the conversation they had with her, and they do write in the report that she may have been under the influence of narcotics. Now,
officers on scene wrote that Evans seemed apprehensive, fidgety, that she'd zone out mid-conversation. They noted she may have been under the influence of narcotics, though at this point she isn't facing any drug charges tied to that. And they wrote something else that stuck with me. That outside of one emotional moment on her front steps, she didn't show much emotion at all. No urgency, no panic beyond that single scene. That's the part that starts to feel wrong. Not because a parent has to perform grief for cameras, but because a roommate in that house allegedly told police something even harder to hear.
Narcotics. Now, at this point, Evans is not facing any drug charges in this case. Police say other than this interaction, when you saw her so emotional on the front steps of her home, after that, they say she didn't really show any emotion. They say that Evans couldn't provide a picture of her daughter other than one from roughly a year prior. She also allegedly said that her daughter became nonverbal and autistic, quote, out of the blue. Police say Evans' boyfriend, who was the one who actually discovered that the victim was missing, when they talked to him, he said that once they realized the girl was missing, they ran outside and tried to find her. Now, there is another adult who is living in this house, someone who's identified as a roommate. They say that they watched Evans and her boyfriend search for her daughter, but they claim that Evans, quote, did not appear concerned for the welfare of the victim, as she was the one who instructed the boyfriend and the defendant to call 911. Now, the roommate said that Evans was actually
while everyone else searched for the missing girl, Evans was more focused on getting herself together, on looking presentable, than on finding her daughter. I need you to sit with that for a second. Not react, just sit with it. Because this is where the case stops being about a missing child and starts being about what happens after a child is found. What investigators say they discovered at the hospital changed everything. According to court records, hospital staff noticed a burn on the girl's arm, one they say appeared consistent with a cigarette. They also documented bruises and scars, though officials are careful to note some of those could have been self-inflicted. We don't know yet. Nobody does. Not for certain.
Evans was actually more concerned with taking that shower so she would look presentable than calling police to report the girl missing. Now, a story like this, it's awful. And for a young person with so many struggles, allegedly not in a place with people who are capable of caring for her based on what police are writing, it's tragic. But police also talk about what investigators allegedly found at a hospital. And sadly, this story gets worse and scary. A DCF rep was called to the hospital, and they say, according to court records, that hospital staff noticed a burn on the victim's arm, seemingly from a cigarette. Staff also saw bruises, they say, and scars on the girl's body, which they do note that those could be injuries that have been self-inflicted. Now, back at the house, police arrest Evans, and they tell her it is for alleged child abuse.
That's exactly why this case is still open. Evans was arrested and charged with child abuse and simple neglect.
Online court records state that Amy Evans was arrested on account of child abuse, simple neglect. Court records also show that a no-contact order has been issued that states that Evans cannot have contact with the victim in this case or go within 500 feet of her. Evans, at the time of this recording, is still in the Lake County, Florida
She's
jail.
being held in the Lake County jail, and a no-contact order now keeps her at least 500 feet away from her own daughter. Now, here's the part that I think a lot of people watching this are going to relate to, whether they want to admit it or not. This isn't a story about a monster hiding in plain sight. It might be. We genuinely don't know yet. But a retired NYPD detective who reviewed this case made a point that I haven't been able to shake. Caring for a nonverbal child with autism every single day, without enough support, without enough resources, can be exhausting in a way that most people never have to understand. Parents burn out. They give up in small ways before anyone notices. That doesn't excuse a cigarette burn on a child's arm. Nothing excuses that, if that's what actually happened here. But it might explain how a family quietly falls apart long before anyone from the outside ever sees it. And that's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath this whole story. We want cases like this to have a clean villain, a mother who's simply cruel, simply guilty, simply done. It's easier that way. But the reality investigators are actually working through is messier. A missing picture of her own daughter, more than a year old, is the only one Evans could apparently provide. She reportedly told police her daughter became nonverbal and autistic, in her words, out of the blue. Anyone who's dealt with an autism diagnosis knows that's not how it works.
I think we can all assume is probably not. allegedly something that a 13-year-old who is nonverbal and autistic could do to themselves. I mean, maybe possible, but you have to investigate that. What does that mean for this case going forward? She's facing one child abuse charge right now, but when you see something like that cigarette burn, like what does that mean for where this could go next?
That's not how any of this works. So now you have a prosecutor's office that has to dig through medical records, school records, financial records, whatever social services history exists, and figure out where the line actually sits between a family that was failing and a family that was hurting a child on purpose. Those are two very different things. And right now, we genuinely don't know which one this is. What we do know is that a 13-year-old girl walked, or was left to walk, a quarter-mile alone in a soiled diaper, unable to tell a single person what happened to her. And somewhere in that hour her mother says she spent in the shower, something went wrong enough that this case is no longer just a missing person report. It's a criminal investigation into what was happening inside that home long before anyone called 911. I'll be honest with you, stories like this get to me more than the political ones, because there's no institution to be angry at here. No agency to blame, no press conference to point a finger at. It's just a kid who couldn't speak for herself, and a system now trying to piece together after the fact whether anyone was actually protecting her. The investigation is still active. The doctor's findings on that burn, on those bruises, on whether any of it was intentional, still have to be confirmed. The prosecutor still has to decide what charges actually hold up.
Possible.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. I mean, again, it's just thankfully that this 13-year-old girl is okay. She's now in the care of the authorities, was checked out by doctors. We'll see what happens next on the criminal.
And this girl, wherever she ends up next, in state care, in a residential facility, with relatives nobody's confirmed yet, is going to carry whatever happened to her long after this case leaves the headlines. So here's my question for you. When a story like this surfaces, and it turns out the system worked just well enough to find her, but maybe not well enough to protect her sooner, who do we actually hold responsible? Tell me in the comments, because I don't think there's an easy answer here, and I don't think we should pretend there is.